He hasn't even finished growing yet. And the tennis world is already asking if he's the next Carlos Alcaraz. That's the kind of pressure most adults couldn't handle. And it's exactly why a former pro just stepped in with a warning that felt less like advice and more like a survival guide. Because this isn't just a feel-good story about a talented younger brother chasing a dream. This is about what happens when a last name becomes heavier than a trophy. And if you think being related to a superstar makes the path easier, you might be shocked by what history says. Jaime Alcaraz is only 15 years old. But in tennis years, that's already the stage where whispers start turning into expectations. Coaches talk, scouts watch, fans compare. And in his case, the comparisons don't start with promising junior. They start with Carlos Alcaraz's little brother. That's not a nickname. That's a spotlight. And recently, someone who lived through a nearly identical story decided to speak up before things go too far. Federico Coria knows exactly what it's like to grow up in the shadow of a tennis icon. His older brother, Guillermo Coria, wasn't just good. He was once considered one of the most dangerous clay court players on the planet. World number 3, multiple titles, a name that carried weight in every locker room. Federico turned pro years later, with solid skills and real belief. But no matter what he achieved, the comparisons never stopped. Every loss became a headline about not being Guillermo. Every win came with a quiet, but he's still not his brother. That kind of pressure doesn't show up on a scoreboard, but it can quietly mess with everything else. So when Federico looked at Jaime Alcaraz, he didn't just see a talented kid. He saw a mirror of his own past. And his message was clear. The danger isn't on the court. It's everything around it. He talked about noise, the kind that sounds harmless at first. Praise that turns into expectation. Curiosity that turns into judgment. Strangers who watch for a few minutes, form an opinion, and then move on with their lives while you're left carrying their words. He basically said, people will come watch, talk, and leave, but you're the one who has to live inside that pressure every single day. That's the part fans rarely think about. From the outside, Jaime's life probably looks like a dream setup. He has access to top facilities, elite coaching, a brother who's already won Grand Slams and knows exactly what the tour demands. It feels like a fast track. But here's the twist. That same access also means there's nowhere to hide. Every practice session can turn into a story. Every junior match can spark a debate online. Every small slump becomes, maybe he's not like Carlos after all. And he's still just a teenager figuring out his game, his body, and his identity. That's a lot to carry before you've even played a pro match. What makes this even more intense is the timing. Carlos Alcaraz isn't just a top player. He's one of the faces of the entire sport. A Grand Slam champion. A former world number 1. A highlight machine who brings crowds to their feet. So Jaime isn't chasing a retired legend whose career lives on YouTube. He's chasing a brother who's still building his legacy in real time. Every time Carlos lifts another trophy, the shadow gets a little bigger. And that's not criticism of Carlos. It's just reality. Greatness creates gravity. And everyone close to it feels a pull. Federico Coria's advice wasn't technical. He didn't break down forehands or footwork. He talked about people, about environment, about making sure Jaime is surrounded by the right voices, not just the loudest ones. That detail really stood out to me. Because in modern tennis, talent gets you noticed, but your circle determines how long you last. One wrong influence, one coach who pushes too hard, one moment where social media noise gets inside your head, and suddenly development turns into damage control. Federico basically said Jaime needs protection, not hype. And honestly, that might be the smartest thing anyone has said about a young tennis prospect in a long time. We've seen what happens when the pressure gets out of control. Young players burn bright and fade. Injuries pile up because they rush. Confidence dips because they're measuring themselves against impossible standards before they've even had time to grow. Tennis history is full of prodigies who were supposed to be the next big thing and then quietly disappeared. Not because they lacked talent, but because the weight around their name got too heavy too fast. Jaime is now walking right into that storm. But here's where the story gets interesting. Because unlike many kids in his position, Jaime has a front row seat to the reality of the tour. He's seen the travel, the grind, the pressure his brother handles. He knows it's not just glamour and trophies. That awareness could be his biggest advantage. If Carlos and the family manage this carefully, Jaime might grow up with a healthier perspective than most rising stars. He can learn that losses are normal. That development isn't linear. That being Carlos Alcaraz's brother doesn't mean he has to copy Carlos Alcaraz's path. And that's the key part of Federico Coria's warning. Forge your own identity. It sounds simple, but in practice, it's brutally hard. Imagine walking onto court and hearing your brother's name in the stands more than your own. Imagine commentators bringing up his titles while you're just trying to hold serve in a junior event. Imagine social media clips comparing your forehand to his, frame by frame. At some point, you stop playing freely and start playing not to disappoint. That's when the game changes. The real battle for Jaime won't be against opponents his age. It'll be against expectation. Against the voice in his head that says, Carlos was already doing more at this age. Against the temptation to rush the process just to silence critics. And that's where good guidance matters more than raw talent. I actually think this moment, this early warning, could make a huge difference. Federico Coria didn't sugarcoat his experience. He basically said, I've been there, and it's tougher than people think. That kind of honesty is rare in sports, where everyone loves fairy tales about siblings following the same golden path. Sometimes the most valuable advice doesn't come from champions. It comes from the ones who struggled and learned the hard way. Now, let's be clear about something. None of this means Jaime is doomed to live in his brother's shadow. This isn't a tragic script that's already written. It's a crossroads. He could grow into a completely different type of player. Different strengths, different style, different timeline, and that would be perfectly fine. But for that to happen, the people around him have to protect his individuality as fiercely as they protect his ranking. And fans have a role too, whether we like it or not. It's easy to hype, easy to label someone the next big thing, easy to post comparison clips. But every comment adds to the noise Federico warned about. Every expectation becomes another weight on a teenager's shoulders. Maybe the best thing we can do is let him be Jaime, not Carlos 2.0. Meanwhile, Carlos himself is still writing his own story at the top of the game, dealing with pressure on a completely different scale. Titles, rankings, rivalries. The spotlight never leaves him either. And that's another layer people forget. Jaime isn't just chasing a legend. He's watching his brother deal with insane expectations in real time. That can be inspiring, but also intimidating, because success at that level looks almost superhuman. The good news is, if there's any family that understands how to handle rapid rise and global attention, it might be the Alcaraz camp. They've already navigated fame once. They know what the media can do. They know how fast narratives form. If they apply those lessons to Jaime's development, Federico Coria's warning might turn from a scary prophecy into a protective shield. Still, the risk is real. The pressure is real. And the tennis world will be watching every step, whether that's fair or not. So the big question isn't just how good Jaime Alcaraz can become. It's whether he'll be allowed to become his own version of good, not a copy of greatness that already exists. Because sometimes the hardest part of a tennis career isn't winning matches. It's figuring out who you are when everyone else thinks they already know. And that's a journey no ranking can measure. Before we wrap this up, I want to hear from you, because this is one of those stories where the fan's perspective really matters. Do you think having a superstar sibling is more of an advantage or a burden in tennis? And what would you do if you were in Jaime's position right now? This is exactly why we love covering the human side of the sport here. Tennis isn't just about forehands and trophies. It's about pressure, identity, family, and the invisible battles players fight long before they lift the title. If you enjoy deep dives like this into the real stories shaping the future of the game, stick with Tennis IQ, where we don't just follow the scores, we follow the stories behind them.